Franchising is the practice of the right to use a firm's business model and brand for a prescribed period of time. The word franchise is of Anglo-French derivation from franc, meaning free, and is used both as a noun and as a verb. The franchisor. The franchise is an alternative to building chain stores to distribute goods that avoids the investments and liability of a chain. The franchise's success depends on the success of the franchisees. The franchisee is said to have a greater incentive than a direct employee because they have a direct stake in the business. 33 countries, including the United States and Australia, have laws that explicitly regulate franchising, with the majority of all other countries having laws which have a direct or indirect impact on franchising. Franchising is also used as a foreign market entry mode. History. The boom in franchising did not take place until after World War II. Nevertheless, the rudiments of modern franchising date back to the Middle Ages, when the Catholic Church made franchise-like agreements with tax collectors, who retained a percentage of the money they collected and turned the rest over to the church. The practice ended around 1562 but spread to other endeavors. For example, in 17th century England, franchisees were granted the right to sponsor markets and fairs or operate ferries. There was little growth in franchising, though, until the mid-19th century, when it appeared in the United States for the first time. One of the first successful American franchising operations was started by an enterprising druggist named John S. Pemberton. In 1886, he concocted a beverage comprising sugar, molasses, spices, and cocaine. Pemberton licensed selected people to bottle and sell the drink, which is now known as Coca-Cola. His was one of the earliest and most successful franchising operations in the United States. The Singer Company implemented a franchising plan in the 1850s to distribute its sewing machines. The operation failed, though, because the company did not earn much money even though the machines sold well. The dealers, who had exclusive rights to the territories, absorbed most of the profits because of deep discounts. Some failed to push Singer products, so competitors were able to outsell the company. Under the existing contract, Singer could neither withdraw rights granted to franchisees nor send in its own salaried representatives. So, the company started repurchasing the rights it had sold. The experiment proved to be a failure. That may have been one of the first times a franchisor failed, but it was by no means the last. Fortunately, the Singer venture did not put an end to franchising. Other companies tried franchising in one form or another after the Singer experience. For example, several decades later, General Motors Corporation established a somewhat successful franchising operation in order to raise capital. Perhaps the father of modern franchising, though, is David Liggett. In 1902, Liggett invited a group of druggists to join a drug cooperative. As he explained to them, they could increase profits by paying less for the purchases, especially if they set up their own manufacturing company. His idea was to market private label products. About 40 druggists pooled $4,000 of their own money and adopted the name Rexall. Sales soared, and Rexall became a franchisor. The chain's success set a pattern for other franchises to follow. Although many business owners did affiliate with cooperative ventures of one type or another, there was little growth in franchising until the early 20th century, and what franchising there was did not take the same form as it does today. As the United States shifted from an agricultural to an industrial economy, manufacturers licensed individuals to sell automobiles, trucks, gasoline, beverages, and a variety of other products. The franchisees did little more than sell the products, though. The sharing of responsibility associated with contemporary franchising arrangement did not exist to any great extent. Consequently, franchising was not a growth industry in the United States. It was not until the 1960s and 1970s that people began to take a close look at the attractiveness of franchising. The concept intrigued people with entrepreneurial spirit. However, there were serious pitfalls for investors, which almost ended the practice before it became truly popular. Largest franchised chains. The following U.S. listing tabulates the early 2010 ranking of major franchises along with the number of sub-franchisees from data available for 2004. The United States is a leader in franchising, a position it has held since the 1930s when it used the approach for fast food restaurants, food inns, and, slightly later, motels at the time of the Great Depression. As of 2005, there were 909,253 established franchise businesses, generating $880.9 billion of output and accounting for 8.1% of all private, non-farm jobs. This amounts to 11 million jobs, and 4.4% of all private sector output. 1. Subway startup costs $84,300, $258,300. 2. McDonald's startup costs in 2010 $995,900, $1,842,700. 3. 7-Eleven Inc. startup costs in 2010 $40,500, $775,300. 4. Hampton Inns and Amp Suites startup costs in 2010 $3,716,000, $15,148,800. 5. Great Clips startup costs in 2010 $109,000, $203,000. 6. H&M R Block startup costs $26,427, $84,094. 7. Dunkin' Donuts startup costs in 2010 $537,750, $1,765,300. 8. Yanni King startup costs $11,400, $35,050. 9. ServPro startup costs in 2010 $102,250, $161,150. 10. Minimarkets startup costs in 2010 $1,835,823, $7,615,065. Mid-sized franchises like restaurants, gasoline stations and trucking stations involve substantial investment and require all the attention of a business person. There are also large franchises like hotels, spas and hospitals, which are discussed further under technological alliances, fees and contract arrangement. 3 important payments are made to a franchisor: a royalty for the trademark, reimbursement for the training and advisory services given to the franchisee, and a percentage of the individual business unit's sales. These 3 fees may be combined in a single management fee. A fee for disclosure is separate and is always a front-end fee. A franchise usually lasts for a fixed time period and serves a specific territory or geographical area surrounding its location. One franchisee may manage several such locations. Agreements typically last from 5 to 30 years, with premature cancellations or terminations violations of most contracts bearing serious consequences for franchisees. A franchise is merely a temporary business investment involving renting or leasing an opportunity, not the purchase of a business for the purpose of ownership. It is classified as a wasting asset due to the finite term of the license. Franchise fees are on average 6.7% with an additional average marketing fee of 2%. However, not all franchise opportunities are the same, and many franchise organizations are pioneering new models that challenge antiquated structures and redefine success for the organization as well as the franchisee. A franchise can be exclusive, non-exclusive, or sole and exclusive. Although franchisor revenues and profit may be listed in a franchise disclosure document, no laws require an estimate of franchisee profitability, which depends on how intensively the franchisee works the franchise. Therefore, franchisor fees are typically based on gross revenue from sales and not on profits realized. See remuneration. Various tangibles and intangibles such as national or international advertising, training and other support services are commonly made available by the franchisor. Franchise brokers help franchises find appropriate franchisees. There are also main master franchises who obtain the rights to sub-franchise in a territory. According to the International Franchise Association, approximately 44% of all businesses in the United States are franchisee-worked. Rationale and risk shift. Franchising is one of the only means available to access venture capital without the need to give up control of the operation of the chain and build a distribution system for servicing it. After the brand and formula are carefully designed and properly executed, franchises are able to sell franchises and expand rapidly across countries and continents using the capital and resources of the franchisees, while reducing their own risk. There is also risk for the people that are buying the franchises. Failure rates are higher for franchise businesses than independent business startups. Franchisor rules imposed by the franchising authority are becoming increasingly strict. Some franchises are using minor rule violations to terminate contracts and seize the franchise without any reimbursement. Obligations of the parties. Each party to a franchise has several interests to protect. The franchisor is involved in securing protection for the trademark, controlling the business concept and securing know-how. The franchisee is obligated to carry out the services for which the trademark has been made prominent or famous. There is a great deal of standardization required. The place of service has to bear the franchise's signs, logos and trademark in a prominent place. The uniforms worn by the staff of the franchisee have to be of a particular design and color. The service has to be in accordance with the pattern followed by the franchisor in the successful franchise operations. Thus, franchisees are not in full control of the business, as they would be in retailing. A service can be successful if equipment and supplies are purchased at a fair price from the franchisor or sources recommended by the franchisor. A coffee brew, for example, can be readily identified by the trademark if its raw materials come from a particular supplier. If the franchisor requires purchase from his stores, it may come under antitrust legislation or equivalent laws of other countries. So too to the purchase things like uniforms of personnel and signs, as well as the franchise sites, if they are owned or controlled by the franchisor. The franchisee must carefully negotiate the license and must develop a marketing or business plan with the franchisor. The fees must be fully disclosed and there should not be any hidden fees. The startup costs and working capital must be known before the license is granted. There must be assurance that additional licensees will not crowd the territory if the franchise is worked according to plan. The franchisee must be seen as an independent merchant. It must be protected by the franchisor from any trademark infringement by third parties. A franchise attorney is required to assist the franchisee during negotiations. Often the training period, the costs of which are in great part covered by the initial fee, is too short in cases where it is necessary to operate complicated equipment, and the franchisee has to learn on their own from instruction manuals. The training period must be adequate, but in low-cost franchises it may be considered expensive. Many franchises have set up corporate universities to train staff online. This is in addition to providing literature, sales documents and email access. Also, franchise agreements carry no guarantees or warranties, and the franchisee has little or no recourse to legal intervention in the event of a dispute. Franchise contracts tend to be unilateral and favor of the franchisor, who is generally protected from lawsuits from the franchisees because of the non-negotiable contracts that franchisees are required to acknowledge, in effect, that they are buying the franchise knowing that there is risk, and that they have not been promised success or profits by the franchisor. Contracts are renewable at the sole option of the franchisor. Most franchises require franchisees to sign agreements that mandate where and under what law any dispute will be litigated.